Welcome to the Past in Pictures channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one. Medical records from the Utrecht Hospital in the Netherlands documented a notable case of congenital melanocytic nevus in 1890. The condition, marked by a dark birthmark on the face, shows the 19th century clinical interest in cataloging skin variations for advanced study in European hospitals. Colonel Francis Fenton holds a farewell ceremony for his son Mike in Okinawa in 1945. The young soldier was 19 years old when he died while serving in the Second World War. The scene records a moment of deep mourning as other service members watch the officer kneel by the resting place. Sailors hold a burial at sea aboard the United States ship Intrepid shortly after an air attack in 1944. The colorized image shows the solemn moment when crew members are committed to the water during the Second World War. The record bears witness to the human cost of operations in the Pacific. Aircraft fly over Mount Vesuvius during its last recorded eruption in 1944. The volcano, famous for devastating Pompeii in '79, sent up columns of ash and smoke during the Second World War, creating a rare scene where natural forces and human events overlapped. The inside of the ship SS Eastland appears completely overturned after the 1915 incident on the Chicago River, which resulted in large-scale loss of life. The image shows the ship's interior structural chaos right after the capsizing, marking one of the largest maritime disasters in United States history. Player Bobby Charlton rests in a hospital bed days after surviving the Munich air disaster that struck the Manchester United team in 1958. The image captures a moment of vulnerability and physical recovery for one of the greatest soccer legends after an event that shaped the sport's history. The 1964 Alaska earthquake lasted an exceptional 4 minutes and 38 seconds, making it the strongest in United States history. With a magnitude of 9.2, the quake produced tsunamis and permanent geographic changes, causing major damage in cities like Anchorage and many coastal areas. A German sailor emerges from the hatch of a submarine in 1916, showing the physical and mental strain caused by the extreme conditions of undersea warfare. During the First World War, life on these vessels was defined by tight confinement and constant danger on open sea patrols. Polish men face a line of armed soldiers during the beginning of the occupation in 1939. The image captures the tension of an extreme moment, with reactions ranging from defiance to fear. The historic record highlights the harsh repression experienced in the streets of Poland. The inside of the Apollo 1 command module cabin shows heavy soot marks after a sudden fire during tests in 1967. The launch pad accident led to the loss of 3 astronauts, pushing the National Aeronautics and Space Administration to make major safety reviews before continuing the space program. Alvin Karpis, then a fugitive, shows his hands without fingerprints altered in 1934 to avoid police identification. Among the men listed as public enemy number 1, he was the only one captured alive by authorities. The record details extreme methods used to bypass the controls of the time. Yoshio Kodaira walks under police custody in Japan in 1947 after a series of serious cases during the transition from wartime to occupation. The traditional straw basket was used to hide the defendant's identity in court while he faced the charges. A pilot in the United States Women Air Force Service pilots prepares for a mission at Avenger Field, Texas in 1943. The program was groundbreaking by allowing women to fly military aircraft in non-combat roles, freeing male pilots for operational duty during the war. The courtroom in Chicago buzzed with tension during Al Capone's trial. In the gallery, members of his group raised felt hats to hide their identities from cameras, revealing the atmosphere of intimidation and the reach of the criminal organization in 1931. A powerful image shows John Schultz's home, pierced by a large tree after the Johnstown Flood in 1889. The event in Pennsylvania caused massive structural destruction and widespread human impact, becoming a historic turning point for relief efforts and the evolution of urban safety in the United States. A protective mask with chainmail was essential gear for French tank crews in 1918 during the First World War. The equipment aimed to protect the face from metal fragments and splatter caused by hits on the vehicle's armor. A double F4 tornado struck Midway, Indiana during the Palm Sunday outbreak in 1965. The event was part of a series of 55 tornadoes that caused widespread human impact and heavy damage, and it is remembered as one of the most severe weather events in United States history. Young Lieutenant Edwin Wright, nicknamed Lucky, points to a hole made by defensive fire in the propeller of his Republic P-47 Thunderbolt fighter in Belgium in 1944. At 19 years old, the pilot returned after a severe hit during an operational mission, showing the risks faced by Allied air crews in the Second World War. A Soviet soldier emerges from his armored vehicle with his arms raised in surrender during actions in 1941. The record captures the moment he leaves the tank as the opposing advance moves forward in the Second World War. The image documents the uncertain fate of captured service members. The inflatable Sherman tank represents a deception tactic used during Operation Fortitude. In 1944, rubber replicas formed fake forces to mislead German command about the true location of the Allied landing in France. The strategy aimed to suggest a massive presence of vehicles. Service dogs and troops used protective masks against harmful gases during operations in 1944. The use of this equipment was mandatory for the animals that supported the teams, showing technological adaptations and extreme protective measures in the historical context. In 1970, during the Vietnam conflict, an improvised hospital in a swamp shows the extreme conditions faced by medical teams under fragile tents and surrounded by dense vegetation. Professionals treated patients, highlighting human resilience in crisis settings. The Great Chilean earthquake in 1960 reached a historic 9.5 on the moment magnitude scale. The event caused widespread human impact and billions in losses, and it remains the most powerful earthquake ever recorded by scientific instruments. This 1943 image portrays British officer Adrian Carton de Weert, known for surviving severe wounds in multiple conflicts and aircraft crashes. With an eye patch and a pipe, he embodies 20th century military resilience. The record preserves an unusual life story shaped by major conflicts. Winston Churchill prepares to speak to Allied forces at the ancient theater of Carthage in 1943. The historic setting in Tunisia served as a stage to motivate troops during the North Africa campaign in the Second World War. The record highlights the scale of the moment amid centuries-old ruins. The Messerschmitt 109 fighter undergoes rigorous testing in the most advanced wind tunnel in the world in 1940. The cutting-edge facility made it possible to study the German aircraft's aerodynamics during the Second World War. The record details aviation engineering focused on performance over Europe. A colossal stack of 4,000 buffalo hides in Dodge City shows the peak of the leather trade in 1878. The record highlights large-scale killing that nearly drove the species to disappear in North America during westward expansion. The image reflects the commercial and environmental impact of that industry. Children work packaging tea in a London factory in 1921. At the time, local law required a minimum age of 12 years for industrial employment. The record documents youth labor conditions and British factory organization in the early 20th century. A police officer watches the barred area of a monitored patient ward at Bellevue Hospital in New York around 1890. The record captures austere conditions and strict control inside the unit. The image reflects late 19th century practices and views on mental health. The surgical amphitheater at Boston City Hospital in 1890 reveals 19th century academic medicine. Students watch closely from raised galleries while surgeons work under natural light. The scene documents the technical shift toward more formal clinical settings. Goalie Terry Sawchuk of the Toronto Maple Leafs shows the many scars he accumulated during his professional hockey career. Before protective masks were required, players often took hits from pucks and sticks. The documentary record reveals the intense physical wear faced by elite athletes in the National Hockey League. A worker balances dangerously on a steel beam at the top of the Empire State Building in 1931. The image shows the extreme working conditions during construction of the iconic New York skyscraper. The historic record captures the vast city below as the worker defies gravity. James Logan appears in this 1870 photograph after being convicted of stealing the coat he is wearing in the image. At 20 years old, he was sentenced to 1 month of hard labor as punishment. The documentary record shows how severe the justice system could be for minor offenses at the time. In 1924, detained Jenny McGregor shows the bold tactics of illegal transport during the Prohibition era in the United States. She used metal flasks hidden under her coat to carry drinks discreetly, a creative method to get around enforcement at the time. The self-defense device created by Samuel Schwartz in 1929 presents a curious idea for personal protection. The system activated automatically when the user raised their hands, pulling cords connected to the mechanism. The invention reflects the search for safety solutions in the 1920s. A striking image shows the power of the Okeechobee hurricane that hit Puerto Rico in 1928. A 10-foot piece of wood went completely through the trunk of a palm tree, serving as a silent proof of the violent winds that devastated the region and caused immeasurable property damage. The Pantheon in Rome appears surrounded by deep water during a historic flood in 1937. The record shows the classic Roman temple with its colonnade partly submerged, highlighting how vulnerable ancient monuments can be during Tiber River flooding. The image documents a rare event in Italy. Patients with a lung condition rest in outdoor beds in Colorado around 1930 to get sunlight and fresh air. Before antibiotics, constant exposure to natural elements was a common form of care. The record captures hospital design planned to support recovery. Chief chemist Howard Rogers poses in 1963 beside 5,000 bottles of chemicals used in developing the Polaroid color film process. The image marks a milestone in industrial innovation, where years of rigorous lab research led to the revolution of instant color photography. A helicopter carries a monumental dinosaur replica through the sky toward the Boston Museum of Science. The aerial logistics operation done to add the piece to the museum collection passes over the city's skyscrapers in an unusual moment that blends modern engineering with the history of paleontology. The cockpit of the massive Spruce Goose reveals Howard Hughes's ambition during takeoff preparations. This flying boat of about 220 short tons challenged the engineering of its day with its monumental structure. The 1940 record captures the eccentric aviation pioneer testing the limits of global air technology. Project 651 launch systems reveal Soviet naval engineering during the Cold War. The Juliet class, begun in 1959, used diesel-electric propulsion to deploy cruise weapons on strategic missions. The design featured a raised bridge and robust external missile containers. A young Spitfire pilot adjusts his flight gear in England during the 1940s. The iconic British fighter was essential to Allied air defense in the Second World War. The record captures the technical preparation moment before a mission over European skies. The imposing United States ship Recruit, a battleship made entirely of wood, sits in the center of Union Square in New York in 1917. The monumental structure served as a strategic recruiting tool for the United States Navy, drawing thousands of volunteers amid the First World War fervor. Passengers board a massive airship by a moving gangplank in Cardington, England during the 1920s. The site had dedicated mooring towers designed to make access to the era's luxury aircraft easier. The record captures a moment from the golden age of airship travel. A colossal crowd of 300,000 spectators fills Wembley Stadium during the 1923 Football Association Cup final. The attendance far exceeded the official capacity of 5,000, creating a historic scene of chaos on the field. The epic event marked the sporting opening of the iconic home of soccer. A crowd of sailors packs the inner decks of the United States ship Oregon to watch a boxing match in 1897. The sporting event served as entertainment and physical training for the crew, reflecting the social routine and leisure traditions aboard major United States Navy battleships in the late 19th century. A vast forest area in Siberia was devastated by a meteor explosion in the atmosphere in 1908. The Tunguska event knocked down about 80 million trees in a radial pattern, releasing enormous energy that still fuels scientific research on how celestial bodies can impact Earth. The legendary Frisian rebel leader Peer Gerlof's Donia wielded this colossal double-edged sword measuring an astonishing 7 feet long. The monumental artifact reflects the formidable stature of the warrior who fought in the 16th century. Today, the historic piece remains preserved at the Fries Museum in the Netherlands. Workers emerged from a mine shaft in Virginia City in the 1870s. Located in Nevada, the area was the center of the Comstock Lode, one of the richest silver deposits in the United States. The record captures the harsh working reality and the technical equipment needed for deep mineral extraction. A rustic wooden holding station isolated in the vast Wyoming Territory in 1893 shows how law enforcement worked in the American Old West. The simple functional structure was used to keep detainees under guard in remote areas where infrastructure was scarce. An elderly woman rests on a bench in Amiens with her cow after escaping the effects of a crisis zone in France in 1918. The contrast between the farm animal and the busy street of cars and soldiers shows the burden of civilian displacement during the Great War. The majestic Royal Floating Pier rests on the waters of the Chao Phraya River in Thailand in 1900, surrounded by countless traditional boats. The complex architecture of the central structure reflects how important river transport was to the Thai monarchy during a time of great cultural and naval splendor. Judge Roy Bean's establishment in Langtree, Texas, worked as both a courtroom and a saloon in 1900. Known as the only law west of the Pecos, the place offered record-keeping services and cold beer to travelers. The image preserves the rustic feel of the American frontier and the unusual justice practiced at the time. This imposing photograph captures Abraham Lincoln's first inauguration in front of the unfinished Capitol in Washington in 1861. The image shows an anxious crowd and construction cranes over the dome amid the crisis atmosphere of the Civil War. It is a crucial visual document of democracy and American political history. Young Edith Tolkien poses for a portrait in 1907. the year her presence began shaping her husband's literary world. She served as the main inspiration for Luthien, a central figure in the mythology of Middle-earth. The record captures the essence of the woman who influenced lasting works. This rare silent film, made in 1910, shows an early take on the world of Oz long before the 1939 success. The record features Dorothy and the Scarecrow on a rustic stage set alongside animal-costumed figures. It is a key piece for understanding the early days of silent cinema. This 1936 photograph documents the careful restoration of an ancient Viking runestone in Västergötland, Sweden. A technician works from a ladder to preserve the ancestral inscriptions carved into the monument. The record highlights archaeological efforts to keep European Nordic heritage alive. Ceramic figurines found at El Peru show details of Maya culture around the year 600. These rare pieces feature characters with removable helmets, demonstrating notable technical and artistic skill. The archaeological discovery reveals distinctive aspects of clothing and customs from ancient times. A detailed display of osteological pieces arranged in 1927 shows scientific interest in anthropology and human evolution in the early 20th century. The record shows a researcher handling a tray of selected specimens for academic study. The image reflects the museum filing and display methods of that era. The iconic Treehouse Bar in Le Plessis outside Paris delighted visitors with its rustic nature-integrated structure in 1887. This one-of-a-kind hideaway reflects French Belle Époque creativity, offering an elevated leisure spot that became an iconic gathering place at the time. Artists at the Disney Studios closely observe a live deer in 1942 to capture real movement during the production of the film Bambi. This hands-on anatomy study in the studio helped the animators reach a new level of realism and expression in classic animation of the era. Margaret Ann Neve poses for this portrait in 1902, 1 year before her passing. Born in Guernsey in 1792, she holds the remarkable distinction of living in 3 different centuries. Her life spanned major global changes from the late 18th century into the early 20th century. Actor Lon Chaney shows his makeup kit as he transforms for the film The Phantom of the Opera in 1925. Known as the Man of 1,000 Faces, he insisted on creating his own eerie character looks, using innovative techniques that set standards for classic horror and visual effects in silent cinema. At 17 years old, Elsie Janis became a sensation, starring in the Broadway musical titled The Vanderbilt Cup in 1906. The production celebrated the world of car racing, highlighting the actress's early talent in a time of major cultural energy in New York theaters. Warriors known as the Boxers used traditional spears and shields during the uprising in China in 1900. The movement aimed to push back foreign and religious influence in the country, marking a period of organized resistance against expanding colonial powers on Chinese territory. Hollywood star Errol Flynn enjoyed downtime aboard his yacht Sirocco off the California coast in 1941. Known for his adventurous hero roles on screen, he embodied the glamorous, bold lifestyle of the golden age of American movies before the country became directly involved in the war. The trapeze artist, known as Miss Mara, shows impressive forearm strength while training with weights in 1958. Her physical dedication was essential for high-demand aerial acts, highlighting the stamina and discipline of circus performers in the mid-20th century training routine. Athlete Paul Anderson lifts colossal weights during strength training, reinforcing his reputation as one of the strongest men in history, an Olympic champion. He became a legend of weightlifting and strength sports. The record preserves the physical power of the competitor who dominated his discipline. Wrestler. George Hackenschmidt shows his imposing physique around 1900 when he helped reshape strength training. Known for creating the hack squat exercise, he was a pioneer of strength culture and modern physical fitness. The record immortalizes the athlete who became a worldwide legend. Wooden treadmills from the 1920s reveal the early rise of indoor exercise equipment. This rustic manual model ran on rolling slats that required constant effort, marking a phase of technical experimentation in modern fitness. A reusable metal shopping list was a common practical tool in the 1950s. The device had small side sliders that let you mark essentials like milk, bread, and coffee. The record details a creative household design solution from before the digital era. A man displays newly divorced signs on his automobile in 1934 in the United States. The image captures a public statement that was unusual for the time, revealing social and marital changes during the 1930s. The historic record highlights the breaking of stigma around the end of a marriage. A woman handles long frozen underwear on an outdoor clothesline during the harsh winter of 1940. The cotton garments look stiff like boards because of the extremely low temperatures of the time. The image playfully captures the household challenges people faced in past decades. This 1943 image portrays British officer Adrian Carton de Weert. Known for surviving severe wounds in multiple conflicts and aircraft crashes, with an eye patch and a pipe, he embodies 20th century military resilience. The record preserves an unusual life story shaped by major conflicts. A flight attendant from Scandinavian Airlines prepares traditional s'more right in the economy class aisle. The 1968 image shows a spread with whole cuts of ham and artisan breads, reflecting the high standards of Nordic air travel. This kind of in-flight dining defined the golden age of air travel. Three young students focus on their books and notes while sitting on a public park bench in the Soviet Union. This 1960s record shows academic dedication and the push to prepare for national exams. The everyday scene reflects the high value placed on higher education within Soviet society. Fisherman Edwin Couch carries his niece Bessie on his shoulders during a break at the harbor in 1898. The scene captures everyday life in late 19th century coastal communities, where hard work at sea mixed with family bonds among docked boats in the port setting of the time. Children played freely in the streets of Paris in 1920, at a time when motor vehicle traffic was still limited and shared the city space with pedestrians. This everyday scene reflects the shift in mobility in the French capital before modern cars fully took over. Children have fun at an outdoor playground in Chicago in 1903, showing recreation structures that favored physical freedom. The historic record shows kids climbing and hanging on equipment without modern safety features. The image captures everyday childhood in the early 20th century. A child's first haircut in 1955 is captured in a moment of care and discovery. The barber uses a mirror to show the result to the young customer, who looks closely at the new appearance. The scene reflects everyday childhood rituals and the social role of barbershops at the time. In London in the 1940s, a child plays mechanic by pretending to fix a toy car right on the street. The image records everyday childhood during a time of urban rebuilding, when creativity turned public spaces into places for learning and play across the city. A young watchmaker works with precision at his bench under lamplight in 1860. The image documents the detail-focused craft of 19th century watchmaking, a time when technical mastery and patience were essential for building and repairing complex time mechanisms. Two young street musicians pose with their traditional instruments beside an iron gate in London in 1860. The image documents Victorian city life, where roaming performers tried to earn a living on the sidewalks of the metropolis amid social inequality and fog. A rustic sod school in Woods County, Oklahoma, welcomed several students and their teacher in 1895. The photograph shows the simplicity of rural schools during American expansion. These earth-built structures were common on the plains because wood was scarce. Ella Williams, known as Madame Aboma, performed as the Giant Woman in 1900. Standing over 6 feet 6 inches tall, the African-American performer toured internationally, becoming a standout attraction in the entertainment of the era. The record emphasizes the striking scale of her unique height. This 1880s portrait shows a distinguished gentleman with an extremely elaborate beard and mustache style, typical of Victorian male vanity. The image reflects the aesthetic trends of Oneida, New York, where careful facial grooming signaled status and social elegance.